friends, welcome to my November wrap up. All my books are right here. Let me get them situated. I actually don't know how to do this because there's no room anywhere. They're just all gonna sit in my lap. Okay, let's open up Goodreads. You know the drill. So I'm trying out this new little spot because I really want, like, if I'm doing wrap-ups, to have books in the background, but I also really like natural lighting, but it's on the opposite side of the room. So I have a little light right here. I hope it's helping a bit. But anyway, yes, can you believe that it is going to be December? This year has just gone by so fast, it doesn't even feel real. So this is our, second to last wrap up of the year. And I'm really excited because I had a really good reading month. I ended up reading 7 comics and 4 books, and 2 of them were actually audiobooks. So I feel like I'm really getting back into the rhythm of reading like a different sort of variety of books throughout the month, because I definitely like stopped reading comics a lot and audiobooks. So I'm glad I'm finally getting back into the rhythm of it. So let us just begin, okay? So the first, how should we do this? I'm gonna start just with comics and then move on to the books, because sometimes I feel like it's better to just do it like that. I don't know. Tell me how y'all feel, if you even care. Because sometimes when I'm watching others, I do like when they sort of like group their comics or their manga together instead of doing it in order, which I usually always do it in order. So let me know. But I'm going to just jump into the comics and get those over with. So the first comic I read is Patience and Esther. And this is one I've never heard of before. I never heard anyone talk about it. Never seen it anywhere. I actually just randomly found this in a comic book store one day as I was perusing. I was visiting one of my friends in DC and I found this, and it just looks so cute. It's an Edwardian romance, and I just like love period pieces, especially when it comes to romance, and I've never seen anything like this as a comic, so I was very, very interested. And on the back it describes it as sensual, sweet, and beautifully illustrated. Patience and Esther is a steamy period romance and an inspirational erotic journey across the epic sweep of history, from the end of a gilded age to the start of an uncharted future. And I gotta say that something I really liked about this book was that I feel like this was one of the only comics I've ever read that really spanned such a lengthy period of time, and you really got to be with the characters as they went through such a long journey together, and you got a lot of backstory, which I feel like is another thing you don't often see in graphic novels. There was so much backstory to both of these characters, and I feel like I learned so much about this time period that I didn't know. There was actually like a whole section in the back where the author like describes the characters, the design of them. They go into all of the settings, and then they have a bunch of notes which just goes into further detail about all the conversations and all the topics in here. So you basically follow Patience and Esther as they're working as maids for much wealthier people, and you basically follow their journey because Patience is just coming into the household, just starting to work in service, and Esther is very experienced and just kind of, you know, helps Patience along the way. And it spans years and years of their life as they become best friends and then eventually develop feelings for each other. They switch jobs together, they move around together, and it was just really wholesome and sweet and very interesting to learn about the time period that they were in. I'm actually looking up some reviews to see what other people think, and this person mentions it has a body positivity, it has Indian rep, it mentions the suffrage movement, the class disproportions, and is very sex positive. And yeah, this is really interesting too. They actually mention other like queer couples, so I just thought that was a nice touch that they, you know, showed that there were many queer people back then. So yeah, I just thought this was really wholesome and sweet. The relationship and the couple was very healthy, and they ultimately were living a happy life, which was really nice to see. It was really interesting. I really liked that we got to know both of them individually and their backgrounds, because they both had really rich, interesting backgrounds. And then you got to see as they lived together, because they were both also still very like separated and isolated from where they're from and their family. So even though they were so isolated, they got to be together in this way. This also definitely had lots of smut. It was very erotic, like it says on the back here. But yeah, I thought it was interesting to just like see everything, all of what they were doing and their real life, or what, like, you know, would be their real life. And yeah, I thought it was a joy to read. I had a good time. I gave it 4 stars. And then all the other comics I read, the next 6 comics I read, were all of the first 6 saga comics. So I actually read the first 4, I believe, 3 years ago, and I wanted to read more comics, and I didn't actually have a lot on my shelf to pick from, but I did have the last 2 that I had recently bought, 5 and 6. And so I thought I should read more of this series. I really liked it when I first read it, but since it had been so long, I figured I might as well just reread the entire thing. And I'm honestly really glad I did. I had such a fun time reading this series. And this series is kind of complicated to explain because you're basically following this couple, right? And they're from, like, she's from a planet and he's from the moon that circles the planet, and their planets, if you will, have been at war for ages, and they fall in love and have a baby, and no one is happy about that. So it starts with them being on the run. So you also get the perspective of what's called like freelancers in this universe, who basically like don't fight in the war, and they, you know, do their own thing. And so you follow this guy who's a freelancer, and he gets hired to hunt down the couple. You also follow this other group of people from this other planet. I forget what they're called, but they all like look like this, like they have like TVs for heads. So that's really interesting. And the guy you're following here, he's like the prince of his kingdom. So yeah, you're basically just following them as they're traveling and they're on the run and they're trying to keep their family safe, and lots of drama ensues. I'll say it's very like violent. It's also very erotic. It's a lot to digest, but it's really good. There definitely are a little, like, there's some questionable things in this, but overall it's really enjoyable to follow the story. So to just give you a rundown, I gave the first one 4 stars. I gave the second one 4 stars. The third one I gave 3.5 stars. I rounded up to 4. The fourth one I gave 4.25 stars. I rounded it to 4. And then the fifth one I gave 5 stars, and the sixth one I gave 5 stars. So this was totally worth rereading, and I really want to get the next volume soon because just so much happens on their journey, and it's very high stakes. And so it just very much keeps you engaged the entire time. And I have to say what's really interesting about this, and I think what people love about this comic, is that it's actually narrated from their baby's perspective. So obviously you have like dialogue happening between, but all these sort of in between texts is narration from their child. So it's really interesting because she's like observing what's going on even though she's not born yet, and then once she is born, she's still telling the story, almost like from her future self seeing this story and narrating it. So that part is really good. I really enjoy that part as well. Okay, so let's get started with the books I read this month. And we are starting off so strong because the first book I read this month is Iris Kelly Doesn't Date. This is the 3rd book in the Delilah Green Doesn't Care romance series, and honestly I think this author's romance series might be like my new favorite of all time. Like, look how much this is tabbed. I'm just, oh my god, I loved this so much. Honestly, I was a bit worried that I wouldn't like this that much because I loved the first book, I loved the second book, but I definitely still liked the first one the best. And you are following a group of friends here, as per usual when you're kind of in a romance series, and this friend didn't really spark my interest that much in the other books. I liked her, but I just didn't know what to expect with following her own story, and I was not ready. Because I love this so much. I'm just gonna keep saying that, I guess. So you're following Iris. She is the girl that is part of the friend group. So to be clear, the friend group is Iris, Astrid, and Claire. Now, Claire and Delilah in the first book become a couple, and then Astrid and another character that is just newly introduced become a couple. And also, Delilah is Astrid's stepsister, by the way, and Iris is just another one of their friends. And so now we have Astrid and Jordan, and then Delilah and Claire and Iris, right? It's a group of 5. We also have Jordan's brother and his partner too, so it's a pretty big group of friends. And I honestly love the friend group in this book so much. It's seriously one of the best parts of the book for me. And so in this book, you're following Iris and Stevie. Now, Stevie has got to be one of my favorite characters, like, ever. Because, well, for starters, Iris in the beginning of this book has, like, sworn off love, right? And Stevie has her little friend group of her own, and she just recently got out of a pretty long-term relationship, and the person she got out of a relationship with is still like part of her friend group, and then started dating one of her friends in the friend group, like every group of gay people ever. So she's kind of going through it because now she has to see her ex with her other friend all the time and like act like she's cool. And so Stevie and another one of her friends, separate from those two, basically go out to a bar, and you know, they're encouraging Stevie to get out there. Stevie is very shy, she's an anxious gal, and she's having trouble, but she does eventually meet Iris on the dance floor, and they honestly hit it off pretty well. But then once they go back to Stevie's place, it just does not end well because Stevie is super anxious and they're both a little drunk, and it just doesn't end well, right? So they sort of just part ways and plan to never see each other again. But when Stevie gets back from that night, all her friends are like, how did it go? And then the one friend that was at the club with her was like, oh, she met a girl, she went home with a girl. And so she kind of lies and says that it went well and they're sort of dating now. And then literally Stevie's friends like work and like run a queer theater company, and as they're having auditions, Iris shows up, and cue the fake dating trope. It is literally incredible. It was so good. It was literally so good. Fake dating is one of my favorite tropes, so already I'm just loving this. And it basically, you know, just goes through the motions of a romance book, going through all these great scenes where they're both like with their friends, and Iris's friends know they're like fake dating, but Stevie's don't. And so Iris's friends are very much like, girl, be for real. They're like, we can tell you guys actually like each other, like why are you fake dating? Just real date. But Iris is like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do it. She's like sworn off romance and she doesn't want to do it. But then maybe the best part of this book occurs, which is when, and this is just like so romance book of them, but like Iris is an aspiring author, right? And she doesn't do romance. And Stevie is a little anxious gal, so she doesn't do intimacy, right? So they basically decide to make a little pact and figure, you can teach me how to, you know, go about intimacy if I were to be with someone that I would want to be intimate with, and I'll teach you how to, you know, ace romance. And so they literally start doing like lessons where each other like teach one another how to, yeah, you know. And it's just so good because they really just grow closer naturally, but they still have that bit of standoffishness, and the tension, like, it builds up in such a great way. I just feel like the slowish burn of this was done so well. And there's so many fun aspects to it, like the whole theater thing, and they ended up being like romantic co-stars in the play too. And then all the scenes with like both of their friend groups, and honestly both of their individual character arcs were done so well. I especially love Stevie because I feel like she is one of the few characters I've really read about where the anxiety rep was so well done. So if you're interested in that at all, I would highly recommend this. I would just highly recommend this to anyone. I loved it so much. So if it's not obvious, I gave this 5 stars. Okay, the next book I read was The Writing Retreat. I listened to this one on audio. I have to say, I have to admit, this took me forever to read. I literally started reading this in the beginning of September and didn't finish it till mid-November. But honestly, it wasn't really because of the book. It was just because I was getting back into audiobooks. So anyway, in this book, you're basically following a group of writers as they go to this writing retreat. And you're following the main girl, Alex, and she basically like applied to go to this writing retreat. And the writing retreat is hosted by her favorite author of all time. And I can't remember if she was like rejected or she didn't send her stuff in on time, but basically she was not going to go. And then a friend of hers sent in her stuff and she ends up being able to go. The catch is though that in the beginning of this book you find out that her and one of her best friends had a huge falling out, and they're both writers, and her other friend, who is their mutual friend, submitted for both of them, and they both got accepted, and now they both are going together. I mean, not together, but together, because there's only like 6 girls that are going. So you basically follow them as they're going to this retreat. It's super isolated and eerie, and then you get to know like all the other sort of like secondary characters that are also there at the retreat with them. And at first I have to say this book for me kind of moved pretty slowly, because at first you're getting to know like all of the characters, and then you're also getting to see like our main character Alex, her relationship with this author that she's always admired, and you're getting to see like all the rules that are kind of set up in this retreat, what they're going to be doing. And then you also kind of see how these 2 former best friends kind of have to deal with being around each other after such a big falling out. And it's really interesting. I don't know how I feel about their friendship, because the one girl is just so like mean in the beginning of this book, and I guess it could be justifiable considering what our main character sort of did to her. It's hard though. I can kind of see both sides, but I definitely didn't like the other character. Her name is Ren, the other best friend, at first at least, and then you actually find out that they had a romantic relationship together as well. I think that's what made me not like Ren, because she was a real bitch about it. Like, she sort of initiated everything and then was like, I only did that because of you, and was very much like, I was never ever interested in you at all, and kind of throwing it back into her face, even though she literally was the one to initiate everything. It just rubbed me the wrong way. But anyway, as we're getting to know all the characters and the main author hosting this group of girls, lots of drama is happening, and you find out from other girls that Ren is talking about her and saying this stuff, and you know, people are kind of divided and all that. However, I will say this book at the end got so good. And I don't want to like really give it away, but let's just say that retreat was not what we were expecting. It was just way more intense than initially expected. And honestly, there were a good amount of plot twists that I was not expecting whatsoever. And I thought they were really well done. And by, I'd say, maybe the halfway point, maybe a little further in, everything was moving really fast, and I wanted to know what was going to happen really badly. It definitely went in many directions I was not expecting, and it was certainly thrilling and a little horrifying. And I also found myself actually really interested in all of the characters towards the end, which at the beginning I definitely wasn't as invested in what they had to bring to the table, but it definitely turned into like this survival situation that was very scary and freaky, and paired with the atmosphere in this book, I feel like that totally made it as well, because they're all very isolated. There's no connection to the outside world. It's very snowy. So I really enjoyed my time reading this book. I gave it 3.75 stars. I rounded up to 4. Like I said, I really enjoyed it. I just feel like the fact that the beginning was very slow for me kind of bumped it down a little bit, and also the ending, parts of it were satisfying, but parts of it weren't for me. So that's where I landed in terms of ratings. Okay, the next book I read was The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. As you can see, this one is also very tabbed. I did upload a whole reading vlog dedicated to this book and just the Hunger Games franchise in general. I watched all the movies, including this one, and I was very immersed in this world, I have to say that. So I actually ended up giving this 3.5 stars. I rounded it down to 3, because even though I feel like the best and like most redeeming part of this book was being in this universe again and learning the history of the games and where it all came from, and learning Snow's background as well, I just didn't love following Snow as a character. He just sucked. He literally sucked. And I gotta say, I'm like the #1 fan for following a character that we're supposed to hate, but like not like this at all. I mean, it definitely was interesting, but this man's inner monologue was horrifying. I saw something where it said that the movie version of Snow, or Coriolanus in this book, should have like the inner monologue narration like Joe does in You, and I could not agree more, because he is so much more like palatable in the movies. But if half y'all heard what this man was thinking, oh, you would be scared. You would be so terrified. It is just, it's foul. And so I wasn't a big fan of that, but I gotta say, probably like what made me not like this the most was the ending of this book. I totally get it. Like, I know it's a prequel. It's like his villain origin story. It's all about him. But if you're gonna give me as good of another protagonist like Lucy Gray, I need more of her, especially at the end. Especially at the end. The fact that, like, and I guess this is sort of a spoiler, so just FYI, but the fact that we literally never find out what happens to her makes me so upset. And I get it. Like, maybe it was the best decision. What do I know? But in the moment, that made me furious. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I've got a whole vlog of me reading this if you do want to hear more of my thoughts in depth. And I am really glad that I read this. I'm very, very glad that I read this, but it kind of was just like middle of the road for me. Okay, and the last book I ended up reading was The Children on the Hill. This was another one I listened to on audio, and I really, really liked this one. This is like a sort of, I would say this is like a psychological thriller. So you're basically following these children, this brother and sister, that live with their grandmother, and their grandmother owns a psychiatric hospital. And this sort of POV that you're getting is set in the 70s. So their grandmother is running this psychiatric hospital, and they're sort of involved, like not much, but they go there, they live nearby. And they often talk about how their gran takes home patients sometimes if they need a little extra care. And they definitely get to know the workers and the patients, right? And then one day their gran brings home this young girl that's around the other girl's age. So you're following the one little girl, her name is Vi or Violet, and she's 13, and then her younger brother, I'm not sure how old he is, but she's supposed to be 13. She honestly reads a little younger to me, but it also could be the fact that she's super isolated. Like, they're homeschooled, they don't really interact with other children. So yeah, one day their gran brings home this little girl, and they're like, you know, just be nice to her. She's been through a lot, and you know, she might not always be here, but she needs to stay here for right now. And they're so excited because to them, like, this is a new sister. And it's like a running thing that Vi has always wanted a sister, and now she has a sister, and she's so happy. And they do really bring her into their family, but she definitely is obviously not well. Like, at first, for a really long period of time, she doesn't speak to them and she won't respond. And Vi is really trying to connect with her. So then in the other POV, it's modern day, and you're following the sister as she's trying to track down this monster, because there's been a series of girls going missing, and every time they go missing, they report beforehand that they've had like some sort of interaction with local legends, like local monsters, right? And the thing that they all did together as kids was monster hunting. So that is like a huge, huge theme in this book, is monsters. And so you can tell in this present day that the sister thinks it was her sister, because it's being foreshadowed that something really tragic happened to the kids and to the hospital and to their home eventually. We just don't know what it is. And so something very dramatic has happened to drastically change all of their lives, and you can tell now that the siblings are very detached from each other in the present day. And the present day is when the girl is 50, I believe. So it has been many years since the past POV. And I just really love this. I loved the atmosphere, the setting so much. And I really loved following the children. I feel like I haven't really read many books where you're following children, especially in adult books, but I found it to be very interesting to read about. And so eventually the mystery unravels as Vi is getting to know her sister. Her name's Iris. I don't know if I said that. As Vi is kind of poking and prodding at Iris and trying to help her, and Iris eventually does start speaking, she starts to really unravel and discover where Iris is truly from. And what I really, really liked about this book was the fact that it had a lot of references to Frankenstein, and it really touched upon the fact and just the themes and the question of who is the real monster, like someone who is making the monster or the monster themselves. And there were two really, really big plot twists at the end of this book. The first one I totally saw coming, but the second one threw me through a loop. I was shocked at the second plot twist. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed this book as well. The only thing I'd have to say is I didn't love the ending. I don't know, part of me actually really, really loves parts of the ending, but other parts I got very frustrated with. I'm actually gonna slightly dive into a spoiler right now, so I'll put it up on the screen, but I just have to talk about this. I found it honestly really satisfying in the end that Vi's character, her like being a monster, like her monstrous acts that Iris thinks she's doing is actually not that at all, and she's actually helping girls get out of horrible situations. And then that at the end, her like letting the girls be free is only really finalized by the girls almost like becoming monsters themselves and killing their abusers. That is super, super interesting to me. I wish we got so much more about Vi and her life after in the present tense. And something that really frustrated me so much about this ending was that we found out nothing about Iris, because that was such a driving force through the whole book that I wanted to know where she came from. But overall, I really, really loved this book. I gotta say, I really loved the sister relationship that was portrayed in this. I think it was done so well. Like, there were parts of this relationship between these sisters that truly like got me teary-eyed. But yeah, this is honestly a book I could kind of go on and on and on about. There are so many small details that I could pick apart, but at the end of the day, I really, really enjoyed this. I almost wish I could read a book like this again. I wish I could read this again for the first time. Like, that's how much I enjoyed it. I just feel like the atmosphere mixed with the relationships, the plot twist, all of that made it for such an interesting and fun read. It was so suspenseful and I just had such a great time. So I ended up giving this 4.5 stars and I rounded it down to 4. So yeah, those are all the books I read this month. I had such a fun time. I feel like I read so many great ones. Nothing really disappointed me that hard this month. I'd say the lowest on my list was this, but even still, this was such a great experience that I don't like consider it bad at all. But anyway, yes, that is my November wrap up. I hope y'all enjoyed. Please let me know if you have read any of these books and what you think. But that is going to be it for today. Thank you so much for being here and spending your time with me. As always, it means so much to me. I will see you very soon in my next video. Bye, friends.